I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. On Tuesday, the United States House of Representatives Ways and Means Committee, in a 24-16 vote, voted to release Donald Trump's tax returns from the period of 2015 to 2020 to the public, as well as Donald Trump's related corporate entities, to release those tax returns to the public. Under a provision of the IRS code, it permits the House Oversight Committee to get these records and by vote to release them to the public, because there is a mandatory audit function whereby the IRS is supposed to engage in a mandatory audit examination of the president and the vice president's tax returns, the sitting president and vice president's tax returns. And you recall Donald Trump said, "Oh, I'm under constant audit," and everybody in Donald Trump's administration said, "Oh, he's under audit. That's why he can't release his tax returns." Well, in addition to voting to release these tax returns, which have not come out yet, the House Ways and Means Committee did release on Tuesday a report on the Internal Revenue Service's mandatory audit program under the Trump administration from 2017 to 2020. And this report is shocking. What we are learning from this report. Specifically, what we are learning is, despite Donald Trump's representations and people like Sarah Huckabee Sanders and all of the MAGA Republicans saying that he's under audit and that's why he couldn't release his tax returns, well, we now learn that was completely false. Donald Trump was never under audit, despite the fact that under the United States Code, there was a mandatory audit requirement, a mandatory audit examination that was supposed to take place regarding a sitting president. That did not take place here. As we pull open the report, what it shows is that in tax years 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, and 2020, the only year that there was a designation by the IRS for a mandatory audit program was in 2016, and the date that was selected for that examination was September 18th, 2019. These are for the 2016 returns only. Now, September 18th, 2019, why is that date significant? Because everybody in the Trump administration tried to cover that up until the Democrats took control of the House of Representatives and started filing lawsuits. That's the only reason why in 2016 you have the date of selection for the mandatory audit on September 18, 2019, and it being designated by the IRS as a mandatory audit file. But otherwise, when you talk about the 2015 tax year, the 2017 tax year, the 2018 tax year, the 2019 tax year, and the 2020 tax year, none of those years, again, other than 2016, none of those years were designated by the IRS as a mandatory audit. And the date they were selected for an examination, but again, they were then never designated for the mandatory audit. And mandatory is what it sounds like. It's mandatory. All of that took place after the Democrats took control of the House of Representatives and began pursuing oversight. So, for example, in the 2015, although the date of those tax returns was February 27th, 2017, I mean, it was extremely late filed, the date selected for examination was April 3rd of 2019, 2 years later. What's on April 3rd, 2019? That is the very first time that the House Ways and Means Committee, led by Richard Neal, sends a letter to the IRS and the Secretary of Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, requesting this information. And that's when they decided, let's select the date for examination, but then the Trump administration said, let's never do the mandatory audit, even though it is required by law. You go into the 2017 tax year as well, and over here we see that the date the tax return was filed was November 5th, 2018. The date it was selected for examination was after Trump had already left office in March 23rd of 2021, and it was not designated by the IRS for a mandatory audit. Same thing when you look at 2019 and 2020. So, for example, and we'll go over this because I'm sure you'll remember it, when Donald Trump said, here's a clip of him from November 7th, 2018, when he claims that his tax returns are still under audit and are so complex that people would not understand them. Here, play the clip right now. This was a lie. This was a lie because we know that there was not the 2016 returns. The only one that were actually selected for the designated by the IRS for the mandatory audit program. It wasn't even selected for examination until September 18th, 2019, and none of his other tax returns ever even went through the IRS mandatory audit. So play this clip and bear in mind everything he's saying to you when he goes, "I'm under audit." Completely false. Play the clip.
Go ahead, Jim. He gave me a fair interview the other day, so I might as well ask him a question.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. And picking up there, you told me the other day that you are an open book. So
I think I am an open book.
So point blank, Democrats go after your tax returns. Will you try to block that, or will you allow them to have
Well, look, as I've told you, they're under audit. They have been for a long time. They're extremely complex. People wouldn't understand them. They're done by among the biggest and best law firms in the country. Same thing with the accounting firms. The accountants are a very, very large, powerful firm from the standpoint of respect. They're highly respected. Big firm. A great law firm, you know it very well. They do these things. They put them in. But people don't understand tax returns. Now, I did do a filing of over 100 pages, I believe, which is in the offices. And when people went and saw that filing and they saw the magnitude of it, they were very disappointed. And they saw the detail. You'd get far more from that. And I guess we filed that now 3 times. But you get far more from that than you could ever get from a tax return. But when you're under audit, and I'm on a very continuous audit because there are so many companies, and it is a very big company, far bigger than you would even understand. But it's a great company, but it's big, and it's complex, and it's probably feet high. It's a very complex instrument, and I think that people wouldn't understand it. But if I were finished with the audit, I would have an open mind to it. I would say that, but I don't want to do it during the audit. And really, no lawyer, even from the other side, they say often, not always, but when you're under audit, you don't subject it to that. You get it done, and then you release it. So when that happens, if that happens, I would certainly have an open mind to it.
Okay, now here is the video of Sarah Huckabee Sanders, his press secretary. This is from December 7th of 2017, and here she's lying and suggesting that his tax returns will always be under audit because of the mandatory presidential audit program. And again, it was not being applied to him. The mandatory audit program, I mean, look, he was lying about being under audit before, not under audit. There's a mandatory audit program for presidents and vice presidents, and that was being covered up for him by Steve Mnuchin, not under audit at all. Here, play this clip of Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
I want to ask one question, but I need to clarify something that you said from the podium here on taxes. You said, I think to Matt on Tuesday, that as long as his taxes are under audit, he's not going to release them. His 2016 taxes, to our knowledge, are not under audit, unless they are. Can you
my understanding, and I will double check, but the president's taxes, no matter who the president is, actually immediately go under audit after being filed. So that's actually inaccurate. But I'll double check to be 100% sure.
So my question more broadly is,
and here you have Louisiana MAGA Republican Senator John Kennedy from April 4th of 2019 saying that you have to take Trump at his word and he has legitimate reasons because he's under audit. Again, totally and completely false. Play this clip.
Yeah. Do you want to see President Trump's taxes?
Yeah, I would like to, but I think he has, at least if you take the president at his word, a legitimate reason for not turning them over. He says he's in the middle of an audit, and his CPAs say don't turn it over, and I take him at his word, and I respect that. And I think all things being equal, I would like to see president's taxes. I wouldn't be adverse to turning over my taxes. I don't have anything to hide.
Well, we'll see about that, Senator. But I mean, I guess my point is that it's you agree that it's totally within the purview of the chair of the Ways and Means Committee to get those taxes and to look at them.
I think it's probably within his purview. I think he has an ulterior motive.
What's that?
I think the chair hates President Trump.
What makes you say that?
It's just my judgment based on everything he said. He doesn't appear to me to be objective, and I think he wishes President Trump hadn't won the election.
But what has he said that's hateful?
Everything he says is hateful.
Now, I could show you a number of other clips like that, but you obviously get the point here. Now, in this report that was prepared by the House Ways and Means Committee, they have a number of other kind of red flags that they point out here, numerous red flags that need to be examined further. You know, one of the things that was an obvious red flag is that Trump used over 400 flow-through entities. There was over 400 flow-through returns reported on the Form 1040. And so these are a bunch of other entities that he controls that's used to kind of hide and to shift money. Let's go to some of their other concerning findings. Charitable contributions. Whether the 2015 conservation easement deduction of $21 million and other large donations reported on the Schedule A were supported by required substantiation. Verification of net operating loss carryover schedule. Whether the amount of net operating loss carryover in 2015 of $105 million and future years was proper. You heard that right. There was a net operating loss carryover, an operating loss carryover in 2015 of $105 million. And there were unreimbursed partnership corporation expenses. Whether the terms of the partnership agreements supported unreimbursed expense deductions totaling $27 million over 6 years. Then they want to look into related party loans, whether loans made to former president's children are loans or disguised gifts that could and should have triggered the gift tax, but that did not occur. Cost of goods sold deductions by DJT Holdings, whether these deductions of about $126.5 million over 5 years is appropriate when it's not clear that DJT Holdings is selling what it's selling from the face of the returns. Then it goes into, other things that are just like that. As you go down further, one of the other observations that I found to be very interesting in this, though, is that they said, look, one of the tactics that Donald Trump would use in his disputes with the IRS to avoid paying his taxes is that he would constantly try to stretch out and have these disputes with them and then make these FOIA requests and try to get these FOIA requests to then further delay the requirement to make payments. He challenged everything when he was discussing things with the IRS. Literally every single thing was challenged. The other observation that was made was the House Ways and Means Committee said that given all of the things that Donald Trump had said about all of these other audits he was under, they expected to have a massive file with all of this audit information, and they said that that just didn't exist. There was no other big, massive audit file at issue because he was lying about that. That had just simply never transpired at all. And then what the overall concern here, in addition to all of those transactions I was telling you about, was that people in the Trump administration, specifically at the Treasury Department, which oversees the IRS, led by Steve Mnuchin, were not following the mandatory audit program. Quite the contrary, they were protecting Donald Trump from any audit, and as a result, he was getting away with, all of these things, and the IRS did not look into these transactions during the time that he was president. And so while we don't have the actual returns at this point, this report paints a very, very, very disturbing picture about Donald Trump's taxes, about the pass-through entities that he used, about what appears to be unlawful deductions that he was taking, lying to the public that he was under audit when he was not under audit, how he dealt in terms of providing loans to his kids to get around gift taxes. And you can go on and on and on and on about these shady transactions that he was involved in. But it shows you the importance of the oversight that was done here, and Trump trying to get away from the oversight at issue. And it kind of zeroes in on when Republicans have responded to this, saying, what type of precedent would this set? This would set bad precedent. As I discussed on the other video, this wouldn't set bad precedent. We want presidents to turn over their tax returns publicly like every president did before. But setting aside turning it over, this was a mandatory program where, again, Trump and his lackeys, his cult members, his other cult leaders in his inner circle, that these people just didn't follow the law. They were intentionally not going through the mandatory process that they were required to undergo. I want to show you this video as well, because this is from Congressman Bill Pascrell Jr., and this is him calling out Steve Mnuchin during a hearing and basically saying, aren't you breaking the law by not following the mandatory program? Play this clip.
I wrote a letter to you, and one of the members of your staff responded to that letter when I was making a comparison between the request that the chairman of this committee made under law, under Section 26 U.S. Code 6103, when he requested president's tax returns. Let me read what the law says. Upon written request from the chairman of the Committee on Ways and Means of the House of Representatives, the chairman of the Committee on Finance of the Senate, or the chairman of the Joint Committee on Taxation, secretary shall furnish such committee with any return information specified in such request. The rest of the law goes on to say that you can't make it public, and we all know that. You rest your laurels in your response on you couldn't make it public, unless the committee votes. It's called democracy. So I got a return letter, and then I understand, and we'll get into this in a minute, you also had another request from two members of the loyal opposition that you get some answers to them about Mr. Biden's son's tax returns. So I took my shot. I got my answer. In fact, the person who responded to me, I'd like to talk to him personally about this. He said that I was being intemperate. Being lectured on civility from someone who works for the president, President Trump, is like taking chivalry lessons from Jack the Ripper. It is impossible to be polite to corruption and people who break the law. So by refusing to turn over Donald Trump's business and personal tax returns to this committee, I think you're breaking the law. You have no legitimate legal rationale. We've learned recently that simultaneously you've been offering documents to the loyal opposition. When two Republican senators asked you for the private financial information of Joe Biden's family, your department practically tripped over themselves to provide it. You sent it over to them so fast. Wonder if you stuffed it in a Federal Express envelope. So you refused to turn over the president's tax returns to us, which is required by law. It says shall, doesn't say might. I'll give you the citation. Again, 26, and you're familiar with this section. I know you are. It's right on the screen. There it is. That's the law. Your stated reasons for stonewalling our request, you never cite any superseding legal basis. The only thing you suffer is smug rhetoric and staggering lies. I told you what the law is, word for word, it's right there. Tell me the specific statute that allows you to overrule 26 USC 6103 F1A at your whim. Tell me what statute. Please.
So first of all, let me just comment.
I asked a question, Mr. Secretary.
No, I'm commenting because I find it offensive that you're telling me that I'm breaking the law and staggering lies. I
asked you to tell me why you're not breaking the law. There's the law right there.
Just to be clear, there's a third branch of government, and there are courts that interpret things. This is in the courts, and the courts will deal with it. So that's your interpretation of the law. I'm relying upon legal counsel on what is our interpretation of the law. So in all due respect, I am not breaking the law. You have a different interpretation. You're not a judge, and this will be determined by a...
Neither are you.
Gentleman's time has expired. We'll proceed. We'll move to Mr. Holding.
I look forward to reporting more about what is actually in the tax returns, but I wanted to give you those highlights right now. But the big highlight here, Trump lying. He wasn't under audit. He wasn't under audit. Everyone was lying. I mean, it shouldn't shock you. He lies about everything. But yet again, another big, big lie. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button. We are on our way to 1 million subscribers. Thanks to your support. And in addition to hitting subscribe, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. We have lots of exclusive content. You can only get there, but most importantly, help grow this independent media platform. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.